We're going to talk to the professor of polling, and his name is Whitman. So he's going to tell you everything you should know about the election. We'll be right back. We're back. I'm Leon Charney, and if you didn't know it, there is an election coming up in about 40, 50 days. It's between a man called Barack Obama, and between another man called McCain, and maybe Sarah Palin, who's vice president, possible nominee. Anyway, she is, and Joe Biden, and Joe Lieberman got stuck in the middle because they want to censure him. Did you hear? We have, I got to introduce our man, Bernard Whitman, who's a great Democratic pollster, so we know he's going to talk about the Democratic sway. But he looks like an honorable man, an honest guy. He's going to tell us what the truth is, if that's possible from a Democrat, and I think it is from him. But Joe Lieberman, who was he nominated to be vice president nominee, rather, and now they want to censure him, the Democratic Party in Connecticut. Did you hear that?
Yes, and frankly, I don't disagree. I mean, Joe Lieberman...
Well, he watches the show, be careful.
Sorry, Joe, but my attitude, I mean no disrespect, but when word was floating that McCain was considering putting Joe Lieberman on the ticket, my attitude was take him. He was a terrible candidate for us in 2000. I don't think he added anything to the ticket. And quite frankly, I think that the Democrats, other than his voting with our caucus, would be better off without him.
Do you think?
Now, the Republicans, on the other hand, I was in St. Paul and in Denver. Every Republican I talked to was certain that if Lieberman had actually been named vice president, there would have been a wholesale revolt on the floor of the convention center in St. Paul.
I never thought he even had a chance to do it. It would be silly, but I know Joe very well. He's a very honest man, and he has his ideals and his feelings about certain things. I believe that they're honorable and they're truthful, and I think if McCain does win, I said 100 times, we'll have a kosher dining room at the Secretary of State. And he's out there plugging the Jewish vote. Ed Koch is out there plugging the Obama vote. He's traveling a little bit for Obama. And for Koch, he's an honorable man also. For Koch to go to Obama, not McCain, it probably was a tough decision for him, although he's a Democrat. But I believe the last time, and he's been on the show many times, he supported George Bush. And so you have two Jewish sage giant statesmen, one Koch. I'm elevating them. I don't know if they're at that level or not, but are they influential? Maybe to the older generation of Jews. To the younger generation of Jews, I'm not sure they're very influential. I don't know. Maybe they are. Where do you see the Jewish vote going?
I think ultimately the Jewish vote will come back to Obama. And one story, Leon, that I find fascinating that I've heard privately and haven't heard much publicly is that the meetings that Barack had in Israel, he was extremely well received. And I don't think has honestly used that enough on his behalf. But the individuals with whom he met, both in the political and military establishments, reacted very warmly to him. And I think Obama's been very clear in his support of Israel. I think where Obama needs to make additional inroads is connecting with older Jewish voters, particularly in Florida, who unfortunately have been the victims of a terrible misinformation campaign on the part, not so much of the McCain campaign, but on the part of some of these fringe groups on the extreme right that have floated all sorts of terrible things, which are just fundamentally not true.
I've seen it and I've heard it, and they're people. I know a rabbi down in South Florida who really is for Obama, and his whole temple is practically attacking him. I mean, they didn't want to hear it. Right away, they say he's a Muslim and that you can't believe him. His issue is with this Reverend Weir. That's a tough one. You sat in a church where they want to really, the Reverend is an anti-Semitic character, no matter what you say. So that's a problem that he has to overcome.
And I think you're right. But the truth is, one, he left that church, and I'm glad he did that. But two, we are dealing in an extraordinary time. And finally, we see John McCain beginning to recognize that we're in an economic crisis. It was only about a week ago that John McCain said the economy is fundamentally sound. And when we have distractions like we had with Reverend Wright and this nonsense about Barack Obama being a Muslim, these are the types of things, and forgive me for being partisan, These are the types of things that Republicans do to take attention away from the serious issues that we have to deal with in this country. I mean, putting John McCain in charge of the economy at a time like this would be like electing the fox to guard the henhouse. This is a man who for 25 years has fought against nearly every regulation in Washington. And to suggest somehow that he has seen the light and become a great proponent of oversight, it really stretches the imagination, I think.
So do you think it's given that Obama will win? Or
In politics, there is no given.
Right.
Absolutely not. I think it's going to be a close election. I think it was always going to be a close election. People say Bush is so unpopular, the war, the health care crisis, the economy, and so forth.
And he won.
The United States, as you well know, is extraordinarily divided. Look at 2000. Look at 2004. We have very different views on how to solve the real challenges of our country. So I always have felt that from the beginning this was going to be a very close race. 6 weeks, slightly less, is a lifetime in politics. If I had told you 10 days ago that Lehman was going to go, AIG was going to have to require $85 billion bailout, and the federal government was going to pump $700 billion, $1 trillion to save Wall Street, you would have thought, maybe you were more prescient than I, but most people would have thought you're crazy. So who knows what's going to happen? There's an awfully long time. But a lot of the fundamentals of the race are beginning to sway back to Obama's side. And so as a Democrat, am I feeling optimistic? Yes. Certain? No. We have to continue making the case, and I think that if John McCain decides to show up tomorrow,
what happens if he doesn't show up? Empty chair?
I would say yes. I can't imagine.
Well, we're taping Thursday, so you know it's a non-event because you'll know by the time you see the show. But it's interesting whether he shows up or not. I can't believe he'd allow an empty chair. That would be terrible, wouldn't it?
I don't think the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is a bipartisan organization, is going to allow itself to be used in what effectively would be a Saturday Night Live type of sketch. And, you know, I don't agree very often with Haley Barbour. Haley Barbour, governor of Mississippi, former chair of the RNC. He stood out in front of the University of Mississippi today. And when asked, said, I think there's going to be a debate tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think
he's a very important guy in the Republican Party. Very important.
He's a very important guy. And I think McCain would do I think McCain would do well to abide by his advice.
It's interesting. We're guessing here, you know. Probably whoever guesses correctly, well, it's not a challenge. You'll know by the time you see the show. You know, he's a swinger, McCain. He takes long shots. He took a long shot with Sarah Palin. He takes a long shot. He's a fighter pilot, you know. Asa Weitzman was a very close friend of mine, was a fighter pilot. These guys, soloists. They fight alone. They see planes. They move. They jump. And they talk in that parlance. Whenever he used to talk to me, he'd say, wings are up. We're ready to go, that meant. You know, wings up. Always the parlance. They're a different breed of people. You never know where they're going to swing out of. They're wild. It's interesting. And McCain's an interesting character, but you're a Democrat, and you're a staunch Democrat, so you're working the poll.